Well, viewers, we're in Melbourne in this episode and we've come down to see an amazingly talented master watercolour artist, a gentleman by the name of Joseph Zbugvich. He is quite an extraordinary human being. Let's go on and spend the day with him and see what he's up to. This is going to be absolutely great, let me tell you. Joseph!
G'day, mate. How are you?
Good to see you.
Come in.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great to see you again.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, what an amazing studio you've got here, Joseph.
Yes, I love it here. I've been here for about 7 years now. I just love the place. And I've quickly filled it up with all my little collections and things.
There's a sense of personal ambience in here.
Yes,
So what else have you got along here as well?
There's all sorts of bits. You know, I keep all my materials here, and I keep my pastels in here.
Okay.
I do quite a bit of handiwork, so you know, I've been an artist. I would have been a carpenter or something like
That's
that.
great.
I just love it. My dad was a handyman. I'm a great believer in having the right atmosphere when I work.
Oh,
because if you don't have that,
it's an extraordinary place. So just looking at this book here, is this one of your personal sketchbooks, is it?
Yes. Wherever I go, you know, most of it is done. You will notice if you look through it, it's kind of cafes, because I'll sit down, I'll have a coffee, and then I'll sketch. I've got all my reference books there, whatever.
Of course, yeah.
And again, bits of collection, you know, all over the world.
So you've got a fabulous studio, but we're going to spend the day with you and create one of your masterpieces.
I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to that. I'll do something wet for you, seeing that it's a rainy day.
That'd be marvellous. That'd be marvellous. Let's go back there and have a look at what we're going to do.
All right, no worries, mate.
Thank you. Well, viewers, here we are today with, I think personally, the master of master artists, Joseph Zbugvich, who I think is just extraordinary. I've seen a lot of Joseph's work over the years and obviously followed his career, but to say it's an honour to be with you today is an understatement, my friend. It's an extraordinary situation to be here. It really is. Tell me a little bit more about your history.
I came here when I was 18, so I was almost a grown man. My friends were getting married when I left. I arrived, I went straight to art school to be an industrial designer. I loved cars when I was a kid, and it was my dream to be an industrial designer. I did finish a diploma of industrial design, but in the process I discovered watercolour. We had to do renderings of things we designed in watercolour. And as I say, the rest is history. I just absolutely fell in love with the medium and won my first prize here. I'd only been here about 2 years, I think, and sold my first painting for twice the money my dad was earning working.
That's amazing.
So it was obvious where I was heading from there. I have a very simple philosophy on painting. I just say, I paint, I just paint. Everything else comes after. And I love painting to this day as much as I ever did. I've never been to a class, never been to a teacher. I simply learnt everything myself. In the 70s, there was no DVDs, there was no programs like yours. I just simply went and painted, and that was it.
And the funny part about that is that that you are now one of the great watercolour teachers throughout the world. I mean, you go all over the world teaching other people.
Odd.
I mean, booked out 2 to 3 years in advance just to get in.
Interesting, isn't it?
It's incredible.
I hate snobbery in art.
Yeah, so do I.
I think it's just awful.
So do I.
All these concepts. Once you have to explain a painting, what it means, well, it's no longer communicating to the viewer.
Sure. Okay, so in starting one of your paintings, what and how do we go about it?
One of the first things that happens is that I paint outdoors a lot. It's only the major work that's in a studio, but that's what we're doing today for the sake of your program. But, you know, I'll show you a painting later that I did do on location we're going to do.
Sure.
But I know I've got a photograph there somewhere of it, so we'll go and find that, and that will be at the beginning. I thought, being wet in Melbourne, and you've come down from warm Brisbane, I actually do something iconic, like a wet Melbourne street scene.
Okay.
So it's this little photo. What I'll do first is I will actually work on the photograph itself. It's something that I started to do a little while ago. So it's Photoshop, basically, but it's done by me.
Oh, okay.
So that will be my next thing. So I'll use that.
Well, let's go and do that then.
Yep.
Okay.
That's the next thing.
Okay, Joseph, so from here you're going to obviously go to your palette. What colours? I think that you're using Schmenke, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The wonderful Schminke paints, which are a good quality product with amazing intensity. If there is anything to be said about them that differentiates them from the rest of the watercolours, that's it. Also the ability to stay moist. So the colour spectrum is obvious. I start with yellows and go through earth colours into oranges, reds. I just think of them as warm or cool. The photograph in itself it's quite nice. It's showing us the wet day and all that, but the spacing of the cars is not very nice. It's not telling much of a story except it's a wet day in Melbourne. What I want to tell is an intersection. It's a rainy day, people are scurrying across, and there's traffic, and it's evening peak hour, let's say.
Absolutely.
You know, that's what I want to tell.
I mean, and you really do tell a story, don't you?
You have to.
Yeah.
If you don't tell the story, you're just making a picture. I won't fuss with it too much, you know, it'll be pretty quick. First thing, I feel that's very flat and it needs a lead in, so a few more lines like that. I think a little tram there to really make it Melbourne would be good. And I'll have a bigger car, probably about here somewhere. So highlights first. This tree is too big, so I'll probably eliminate some of that and not have it come in so far. So this is truly very, very rough, and I'll end up probably hardly looking at this, and we'll have some taillights in there.
Look at that.
There we are.
Marvellous.
That'll do.
Absolutely marvellous.
Alright, it's time to paint, so I've got to stretch some paper and so on. Now I'm going to stick some wonderful Ashes paper onto this bit of plywood. So the next move is to do some drawing. I usually start with the biggest shapes first, which are, in any landscape, the two biggest shapes are sky and earth. So a horizon line, as people tend to call it. And I'll say, you know, we'll have it a little bit below half. So that's for our road is going to be below here and the building's up there. So here's a tram and the little antenna which goes up. The rest of it, oddly enough, is not that important, apart from the two lights, which are fairly crucial.
And Joseph, you actually have your own collection of brushes as well. I'm very envious about all of this, I have to tell you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your brushes?
Yes, look, it happened by accident. I went to Spain to do a workshop and discovered that the brushes I was using were made half a mile from where I was giving a workshop. And I met the owners, who were delightful people, and I was instantly sold on them. The factory is called Escoda. The first thing I'm going to do is wash in a large, very pale wash for the sky. I may have some clouds, but I don't think so. And then I'll wash in the surface of the road itself. Students tend to make skies too dark, and their watercolours lose light. That is, they lose that translucent, beautiful light quality that is watercolour. Some people even say sky is the eyes of the portrait of a painting in landscape painting, because the sky is what gives the painting quality. So here comes the wash, and as I say, I start at the top and I just simply go over the top quite a bit to make sure that it's very wet. It looks a bit too dark, so I'll put a bit of water in. So every time I go in to mix a wash, I add just a little bit more colour, so it's just a fraction darker, and that's it. We travel down. So there we are. We've come down to about close to these cars and buildings. We're somewhere in here, aren't we? So it's now time to start looking after highlights and so on. Now I want to introduce you to Mr. Bede. This thing here, I call him Mr. Bede. It's kind of a joke.
Yes.
Out of respect. This welt of colour is your locomotive in your watercolour. That's what takes the paint down. You can see it running as soon as you break past it.
Yes.
And grey's made of many colours. Mix your greys by using all your three primaries, reds, yellows and blues, and you'll end up with a nice gradual wash like that. These are directional lines to lead us into the painting eventually. You should never put your brush to the paper unless you are almost dead certain in what you're using, how you're going to use it, what it is going to be, and see it in your mind's eye. If you're just blindly going and see what happens, it'll be just happy accidents. And that's okay for, you know, abstracts and things. But a realistic painting like this, you've really got to concentrate and say, look at that for a second. So you'll find that I often fiddle with pigment here and do all sorts of things. I seem to be doing nothing, but I'm actually doing probably the most important part of this painting, and that is I am trying to see it in my mind's eye. I do what I call a test. I just make a mark and I say, is that too dark, is it too light? And it looks about right. It can quite often look as if it is too light when it's not. And I start with this little bits, air coolers, aerials, whatever. I'm going to re-wet that. There's a few bigger droplets. I've just given it more life. So it's wetter, so it'll last longer. Clean water and soften this so we get this lovely misty look going back. This remains alive, this line. As long as that bead is there, it's alive, so I can keep going down. Once that dries, it's the end.
Sure.
It's finished. So that tone alone is bringing that forward. We've got a weak tone there, stronger, stronger, stronger still.
Okay.
And now it's time to not muck around. It's an ergonomic way of doing it. There it goes. As this tightens up, as it is indeed, it's starting to slowly, you know, settle and dry and so on. You really need to start looking at the shapes a little bit more carefully. So if you leave this funny little thing here and it dries, it'll come to haunt you. So, and the car has to be cut. A few bits of architectural detail, but some of that I'll dry brush in later. And this is quite nice, it's painted itself. And the more you can do that when you paint watercolour, the better off you will be. And another thing that I'm fond of doing is scratching things out with my nails. I'm not scared of touching my watercolours with my hands. Fingers are great for lifting off just a bit of paint, not too much. So I'm quite happy doing these sort of things. I'll scratch a little highlight there, put that in front, and I think make this wall a bit lighter. So this will have my DNA on it and fingerprints. No one can forge this.
They can't mistake it.
Yeah, and just the last kiss of life as it's drying to see what it does.
And you really just float that mist over it, don't you?
Yes, you don't blast it close. You're finished. And I now need to start moving into my trams and cars before this dries completely. If you trust your watercolour, and if you just trust yourself and say, what destroys paintings is not technique, it's lack of confidence, lack of belief, faith. That's what ruins it. You know, if you don't believe that it's going to work, you'll never convince the viewer that it will work. A little bit of colour into this, just there. It's got a bit of a hump on there. Fine adjustment. this is a bit high. There. Better. Time to do this last car here. That's the back of it. This one is driving up the street. The dark under the car, the shadow, is more important than the wheels or headlights on a car. That's what anchors it to the ground. There's some mirrors sticking up. I'd like to put in the taillights and make them run into there. So we've got this bright, beautiful, bright cadmium orange,
amazing,
which is doing it. Now I'm going to do the same with the headlights, and I use it straight out of the tube, nice and thick, and put it on again while this is still quite moist, so it melts in. Now I'm going to really have to go for it. I'm going to just give it yet another kiss of life. It won't hurt. Never hurts. It always looks good. There. Beautiful. Too much paint on a brush. There is a tree growing on this side. It is a fantastic way of connecting this shape and draping it in front of this one, and it's just a lovely way of making kind of like a tunnel to look through. We simply do this. That's not dark enough. Not enough mixing.
What type of brush have you got there? Is it?
It's just a sable squirrel brush, soft, but not so big. I need to get a bit of control. The other thing I do is I actually punish it by going like that, so it goes into this shocking thing like that, and you push it forward, and that should give us our tree leaves. And again, vary your brush marks so they don't look the same. The worst thing for your brushes is to not wash them out and clean them after you've finished painting. I promised myself to wash and clean them every time I finish. It was a New Year's resolution in 1968, and I still don't do it, and hence it absolutely ruins your brushes.
There you go.
It is shocking because it goes into this hard, harsh thing. A few branches again, and this paint is lovely and thick. I'll do quite a bit of rigger work now. Here's a little highlight, and I will change that into a light, like so. I sell some work in America, and they always find these wires a little bit strange, but Melburnians readily accept these wires running through the sky for the trams. But to me, they are just simply connecting and directional lines. They're just terrific for directing your eye through the picture.
Yeah, I know that.
Time for this wonderful cadmium red mixed in with the cadmium orange. But I actually will use them straight out of the tube.
Oh, I see what's happening.
And then this is pre-wetting the paper, so it gives pigment room to run.
Yeah.
Not everywhere, but enough to give it space. And we'll get it really wet.
Yeah.
It has to be about as wet as you can get it. And I'll choose a reflection colour which will be, I think, a little bit warmer. And it either works or it doesn't. But as you can see, this time my adage of things painting themselves is dead true. You have to just let it do what it wants to do. You can see that this is now starting to work as a wet road.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. I can just angle this a little bit, and I will sneak in some little figures here. I'll give him a little umbrella. So And I'll just lift this off. Well, there we are. This is now finished, and this gives it that nice clean edge I was speaking about before, and I think it's reading quite well. Quite pleased with it.
It's just amazing.
Thanks, mate.
And the crew, it's everybody standing in the background there, and myself would really, really like to thank you so much for having us down here.
Thanks for coming to my studio and sharing the time.
It's been an extraordinary day, it really has. As you can see, when I used the word master, I was not kidding by any means. Joseph's an incredibly talented human being. I'd have to thank Canson and Schmenke and Archers for getting us down here to film Joseph as well. It's a really rare opportunity to get to walk into a studio of a man of this calibre, so we're really grateful to be here. Once again, you can always come to Colour in Your Life and see what we're doing, but until we meet again, remember, make sure you put some colour in your life.